Hi, HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today, we have a special guest on the show. We're joined by Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez, who is an expert in project management. He's a professor, author, executive coach, and the current director of project management office at GSK. Antonio, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, Chris. Nice to be here. Nice to be in your show. I know it's very popular. I know you're doing a lot for HR, so a pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Well, I couldn't do it without people like yourself, Antonio. So I appreciate you reaching back out to come on the show. You know, you have such a long resume. It was too long for me to read out on the show, right? So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey to where we are today.
Well, Chris, I think like many of us, my career started by chance in projects. It's not what I wanted to do when I was at university by any means. I didn't know it exists, the world of projects and project management. I started as a junior in a big ERP implementation. I don't know if you know this, SAP kind of systems,
Sure.
Which is a project which goes always wrong, late.
It's the one that everyone stresses about.
Exactly. So I was there, junior, making copies and chasing people to get their timesheets. And I grew up into the project management world. I started to research. I found like a project is difficult to carry, but companies carry many projects. So imagine the complexity. So that's where I focus, and I continue researching, working as a practitioner in different companies, banking, consulting, government, pharma. So it's become a passion, and I love it because there's so much to do.
Fantastic. And when we first spoke, my first question to you was, how do you manage all of these different things that you do? And it's because of the passion, right? Because you have the full-time role now at GSK, right? That you're currently doing, but now you're offering your new book, as well as doing your consulting and your coaching. I don't know where you find all of the time, but I suppose it's your hobby, right? It's your passion. So it's not work.
That's correct, Chris. I think that's a gift or a luck that some people have. And when you find a job that you love, and I love my work, and I love the research, and I love talking to other companies, then it doesn't feel like work. And you need to watch out when your passion is your work or the area you work, because then you might forget about the rest, the family and your hobbies. So just watch it out. But yes, it's a very, very lucky place to be.
Yeah, I've certainly experienced that, and I'm always trying to make sure I keep that balance, because sometimes it can consume me. Because if your hobby is also your work, it never ends, which is also very dangerous at the same time. But it's also great from your perspective that you get to see the impact that you have on these organizations, right? And you get to see the results and what that means. And that's almost like its own drug. And of course, you know, it must be also be very flattering for you and rewarding to be recognized by people like Thinkers 50 for the work that you're doing and sort of the Global Gurus top 30 list. So you're clearly making an impact in this area. So really excited to jump into this conversation. So I know you've recently launched your second book. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So The Project Revolution, How to Succeed in a Project-Driven World. So this is one of the reasons why I was excited to have you on the show, because this is an area where everyone struggles in your organizations. What was the inspiration behind the second book?
Well, Chris, I think once you write a first book, somehow it's not enough. So I had the second book in mind, and it's always hard to find the right timing, but I was collecting a lot of information about projects, and simple way to help anyone. Doesn't need to be a project engineer or IT expert to do projects better. So that has been the driver for this second book, is providing a canvas, one page where anybody can use that to do projects. It can be an integration, but it can be also a school trip or a holiday or a wedding, or for HR professionals, a competency assessment project or an HRM system implementation. So that's one of the biggest contributions of this book, making simple a very complex area, which I hope I will help others to do their projects better.
That was actually one of the common themes at our workshop yesterday at Unilever, is making is we make things too complicated.
Mm.
And we need to simplify. And that was across all of the different topics we discussed. The one of the key things was we need to simplify it and make it easy to understand and for people to then go out and execute. Because if you overcomplicate, people just won't do it. And they won't adopt it. So this project management canvas that you've created, tell us a bit more about what that looks like and what does it consist of?
So the canvas is built on 4 areas, Chris. Based on questions. So, and the first one, very, very important, is if you cannot explain what's the purpose of your project, then you should not even start. Second area is who's responsible. And this one is particularly interested because projects tend to have many people responsible, accountable. From the top executives, you have sponsorship, from the project management, from the business units. But what happens is often is not clear who's the decision maker. Often is not clear who's driving the project. Often is not clear who's sponsoring at the executive level. So if you don't have the ownership and the executive sponsorship, then that project will probably fail too. And related to that point, research shows that about 30 to 40% of the success of a project is the role of the executive sponsors. So meaning if you're doing a big HR transformation or a cultural transformation and the CEO is the sponsor, if that person is the sponsor but not acting and not supporting and driving the project, exactly, that will never work. It's very, very important role that companies don't understand. Mm-hmm. And for example, I would never teach a company the project management teams, project management, if I don't train the executive sponsorship team.
Yeah, it has to start with them and not simply be a sponsorship, but be active. Because we see a lot of times that they're oh yeah, I'm a sponsor of it, but what are you doing to lead and set the example and be a brand ambassador of this change in the organization? That's a very different thing.
And executives cannot sponsor more than 3 projects. That's my experience. Often you see the top executives having 10, 15 projects where they're sponsors. That doesn't work. So they need to learn to have less and then be more active, like you say, more driving, engage, and pushing that. There's a small anecdote on that. I talked to some executives and tell me, listen, Antonio, I am the sponsor of 15 projects, all of them very important, some about growth, some about regulation. I can't just support 3. I'm supporting actively 3. These 3 projects are great. We're doing the change on time, but the other 12, I don't have time. I'm not there, and they're all a disaster.
You're doing yourself and also the company disservice by taking on too many projects.
Then you come to the core of projects, which is the what are you going to do it, or how are you going to solve the issue, and by when. So the timing is something very, very important. So that's
the third element, is that right?
Correct. Third element. And it's a mix of hard skills. So it's about knowing how to make a plan, how to define what you want to do, plus the soft skills. So it's about stakeholder engagement, communication. So that's a mix of soft and hard skills, which is a big part of projects. Nowadays, even more the soft skills than the hard skills. So that's the third segment. And the last one is not about the project, but it's about where are you carrying out that project? Is that a company or an organization who understands projects, who has professional project managers, who supports transversal projects or not? Or do you have too many projects and there's too many priorities? So where you play your projects, where you execute them, plays a big role, about 20 to 30%.
You've managed hundreds of thousands of these projects in your time. What's the most common mistakes that people make?
Well, one of the common mistakes, and is what I'm trying to do, is sort of reinventing project management. But one of the common mistakes is, and this is human nature, is you have an idea or you see a problem, and the day after you call a kickoff meeting. So let's have a kickoff. Let's get everybody together. Let's get HR and talent and IT all together on Monday because we have this idea and we need to launch a project. That's very, very wrong. And that's where many projects go wrong is you start the project from an idea or a reaction, and most of the best projects have a phase which is often a few months, where it's about exploration, design thinking, looking at the options, looking at the past, looking at the future, at the competition. Do you have the competencies or not? So this is a crucial moment, but because we're in a rush, because we love kickoffs, because we love to start things, is where many projects should stop and start later on.
I'm certainly guilty of that as well myself. And you jump in, you kick it off, and then you realize you don't have the systems and processes, you don't have the skills in place, and you don't have everything you need. So you get really excited, you bring the team together, and then what ends up happening is probably what you're going to say is you go back to the beginning and do what you mentioned.
Exactly.
Where you go back and do the exploration, you do the design thinking, you start there. So.
And I give you an example, a concrete example, Chris. There's many, but this one I love because it's something that we all know. Is the first iPhone project. The idea of having a phone in Apple was launched or first heard in 2001. Mm-hmm. But the project actually started to build the iPhone, which they call the Purple Project, in 2004. So they had 3 years to explore, to talk to prototypes, but the company and the CEO said, it's not the right time. We need to focus on the iTunes. We need to focus on the iPod. That's where we're going to make the market. And later on, we'll try the phone. So 3 years where they decided to just hold on. And then they were full blown onto a project that makes a big difference.
There has to be a balance though, right? So for me as a startup, how much time do I spend in that phase before I get disrupted and maybe get left behind?
Yes.
So, and that's the thing that I struggle with is whenever I come up with a new idea, for example, at the moment, we're building a new online on-demand platform, essentially the Netflix of HR. That's kind of what we're launching. Wow. So it's like it's like Netflix, but with HR content, right? That's kind of what we're building. And my natural instinct, rather than doing research or seeing, is there any other competitors out there and doing some benchmarking? There wasn't anything. I couldn't really find anything similar. But for me, in some cases, that's a positive sign. And I wanted to run straight towards it and just jump straight in the deep end. And I am at a point right now where there are challenges that are coming up that I didn't foresee that I'm having to deal with. But if I spent a bit more time doing some research, I would have maybe saw them coming. But at the same time, I'm already very far down the line. I've done some great things already because I have jumped in and done it. So I feel like there needs to be a balance, right? Though, surely, because if you wait too long and do too much thinking, too much research, then nothing will happen. Yeah,
no, you're right, Chris. And it's finding your own balance and knowing how much you can carry on. I think you cannot sacrifice on quality. So if you decide to do just 10% of your Netflix platform, do it right and go fast, of course, and you will evolve and learn from that. Don't wait for the 100%. They're a big point. There's many, but this one is also very important in projects. The 100% completeness or readiness, that doesn't exist. It's in our minds. We believe that 100% is achievable, but that's not right. There's projects which after a month, they start making benefits. There's projects who are late, but they're making benefits. So 100% you need to scratch, and what you're doing, Chris, I think is the right thing.
What were some of the biggest surprises that you found during your research?
Look at good projects. So we tend to look at negative projects, bad projects, projects that fail. We love that. I think that's linked to the need that we need of bad news, and you see
justifying our own failures.
Exactly. So, but there's actually amazing projects which are transformational. They're transformational of regions, countries, companies, and I took almost only examples of great projects that have transformed cities, citizens, organizations. So I think that's something that I want to push, and I want people to share their great projects.
Mm-hmm. What's the one that stands out the most to you that you think our audience can relate to and gain some value from and some insights?
There's one project which I researched was the rescue of the miners in Chile. This happened in
Yeah.
2010. And that was an absolutely amazing project executed against time pressure, because first they didn't know if the miners were alive, they didn't know where they were, but there was a very strong sponsorship from the president of Chile. The minister of mining went to the site and was there all the time. So that's engaged of men of the executive sponsor, top quality employees, experts, researchers, so to perfection. On the other hand, you look at other issues that are happening now, like the Brexit, and from a project lens, that's a complete disaster.
It is. Yeah.
It is. So most of the questions I talked before, Chris, they're not answered. Why? Who? How? When? So that project is struggling, and I'm not sure it will come to something concrete. So you can take that for big projects like that. Then you can go into organizations. One of them, which is amazing, is an integration of two companies. I know HR people are heavily involved in integration projects, making decisions about talent pools and organization charts and culture. And there's one which was absolutely astonishing, is when a French bank bought a Belgian bank, and they sent the CFO, the number 2 guy from the French bank, BNP, to the Belgian bank, and his only mission was to integrate two banks. The only thing he had to do, that was his priority. He dedicated 100%. He was the CEO of the new bank, and he was having steering committees where you discuss project updates and issues and decisions every day. Every day, the top management team plus the CEO, whose mission was to integrate two companies, was having a meeting for 6 months every day. And nobody missed those meetings because they were crucial. So that created a pressure in the organization, a 12,000 people organization, that we knew what was the priority, which was the integration project. And instead of 3 years, it took 2 years to achieve. So there's amazing examples that we can all learn.
I think the common thread of what you've just said is that they had one task, as opposed to, as you mentioned earlier in our conversation, of multiple projects, multiple projects competing for their time, which is a plus. I'm gathering that not only are they doing these projects, but they're also doing their day-to-day tasks. No one has the capacity, mental capacity or physical capacity, to be able to achieve that. Whereas the common thread seems to be that when there's success, it's because that's the one dedicated purpose to that one task at hand.
Well done, Chris. Yes, exactly. I think there are some parameters that if you meet them, there's good chances that project will be successful. It's researched hundreds of projects. One of them is fully dedicated team. If you have a fully dedicated team, and if you can even get the best people of the company in that fully dedicated team, the chances are big. If there's a strong sponsor who's present there every week, helping, taking decisions, bringing resources in and out, that project will have more chances. So why don't we do that more often? And I think it's a question of what you were saying is, first, people have a job. Job is often not project-based. I'm the HR director, I'm the finance controller, I'm the marketing rep, I'm doing IT. So job descriptions take most of the time of the people, and on top of them, they do part-time projects. And that's already a formula for failure.
Because also at the same time, do you think that there's part of it is that, I've got my full-time job, I'm going to prioritize that over this project because I'm rewarded and incentivized based on my job title and my activities that I'm responsible for and the people. And is the project almost an afterthought?
Exactly.
Is that what you found during your research?
Yeah, exactly that. So most of the companies are still driven and very much prioritized on the job descriptions, on the job titles, on the job functions, which actually does make sense, but I don't think that they have that priority anymore that it was the case in the past, because today is all about change and constant transformation. It's not just one transformation, but you do one and then you start the next one and the next one. So I think that is evolving faster, the way of working, than actually the job descriptions, which like you say, they're linked to KPIs, they're linked to bonus, they're linked to payments. It's one of these frictions that you see in companies today who want to change fast, but they're stuck in the past.
Again, during your research, what are consequences for companies that don't shift to this new model and to project-based?
It has significant consequences. It creates lots of stress. People work on what's urgent rather than what's important. It's kind of a firefighting organization and culture. People love to jump into the extreme situations and take decisions. It creates a lot of frustration. It creates overwork. It creates people who have to drop off. Ultimately, it creates a toxic culture. So it doesn't happen all the time, but you can see it drifting towards a toxic environment where people drop because they cannot stand the pressure and the firefighting mood and trying to do too many things at the same time. And this comes from the top, is they don't have the courage to change the organization and the business model to be more agile, more project driven. And I think HR is one of the key enablers, for sure. Never before HR will play a more significant role than today.
What would you recommend for the HR leaders listening? What are the steps do you think they should take to engage those leaders or make some changes to connect the organization and help change that model to more project-driven, agile?
Some of the organizations I've been helping, not all the cases, sometimes it's the CEO who says we need to change, but at least half of them has been the HR person who says, well, there's things wrong here. People are not happy, or satisfaction surveys, employee satisfaction just dropping. So they step up and start talking to the executive team saying, we need to transform. We need to look at more agile ways. We need to listen at our people. We need to start understanding what kind of organization we need to build for the future. So they lead like an organizational design work stream, which touches on structure, but also culture, talent. And I think they can be driving this. So develop a program where you will design the organization of the future, which will mean some people will lose power. And that's where you get a lot of resistance. The old silos will lose power. And that's where I think HR can facilitate that discussion too.
Mm-hmm. Because that was going to be my next question. I think everyone listening is going to agree with what you're saying. And so I think the hard part is, and how can we develop those competencies required to transform and thrive in the new digital and project-driven economy? So where do we start, and how do we develop those competencies?
Well, I think the first step I do is build a business case. So apply my model. Why do we need to change? And it's for the business, but it's also for the people, the employees, and make it as crystal clear as possible with facts. I'm sure HR has already a lot of facts. So build the model and the rationale for the change. You know that companies don't change if there's no urgency to change. And today there's urgency like never before. If you're in crisis, sure, but in any company today, should be in an urgency to change mindset. So build that platform, burning platform. And like you do, Chris, with your own business, start small, find some areas that you can work, build training. So you need to train people. Most of the companies have never heard about Agile. For them, they don't know what it is. If you're in IT, you probably know, but projects, yes, nobody has been trained for projects. So build a training around projects and Agile. Select a group of the advanced people who can become your ambassadors. Do it always transversally, never focus in one area of the business. So build teams around products or services of markets that can go through this training and then the mentoring part and coaching is very, very important to put in your plans. And like I was telling you, Chris, it's not about training the employees or the managers, but it has to start with the top. If the top is not trained, and believe me, they are often the ones that need more training, or
because they've been doing it the other way for so long, and
exactly,
also they've gotten results from the old way. And just because you got results in the past from that way doesn't mean that's how it should be done now. And
absolutely.
that's a really tough part, and it's fully understandable. I've had to develop my own way of success in terms of the way I sell. The way I sold, 10 years ago is very different to the way I sell now because things have evolved.
Yeah,
But I have got a lot of success linked to those old methods and strategies. So it's very hard to then move away.
exactly.
So it's understandable.
It's
Yeah.
not only that, Chris, but also that old world is concrete. You can measure.
Yes. Yeah.
You can almost touch it. But the new world is more abstract. Is much more uncertain. We're changing the culture, but how does it reflect? How can we measure it? So it's more a leap of faith. And you know that if you talk to ING, there was a leap of faith, thinking this is the new. But they could not show results very quickly. They're starting to show them after 3-6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a challenge of the old. We've been successful, and second, it's concrete and you can measure, and the other world is very different.
Before we wrap up with Tony, if there's a parting piece of guidance that you could give to the leaders that are listening now, that are on their own journey, that are all managing, but I know people listening right now to the show are all managing multiple projects as we have this conversation and are probably reflecting on that. What advice would you give to them?
They should not be afraid. I think this is the way forward. It's going to be more projects going forward. Everybody in organizations will be part-time or full-time project leaders. And I think HR needs to drive this. To the point, Chris had mentioned, but talking to somebody, I think it was IBM, who was telling me, listen, Antonio, we have job descriptions. We had them for 40 years, but people don't work on them anymore. So we're canceling. We're removing all the job description. Imagine from one day to another, and we're just going to have job roles. So everybody will have a role in a project. Project role. So everybody will have a role in a project for 6 months, and then after that, they move to the next one. So I think HR can drive this because it's all about organizational design. It's about competencies. It's about talent, recognition. People don't get recognized for their jobs in projects. They don't get a bonus for doing a project.
That's why they don't do it, right? So
exactly.
you wonder why they're not engaged.
They're not engaged. They do it because they love the challenge, but somehow there needs to be recognition too. So all the rewarding system has to shift too. So there's a massive shift, but there's very, very positive outcomes at the end of the change. It's not the most complex change. I think it can be done. I've seen it happening, and you get higher results, more retention, happy people. So I think, I always, when I talk to HR, there's no one else. There's a strategy will not drive this. Business will not drive this. The CEO, sometimes they do because they understand. I had several cases, but who else is going to drive the change? It's HR.
But you're right. For this to take place, so much needs to change. The systems, the structure, the way people are rewarded need to change because it's no longer around your job title and your where you are in the hierarchy. There's so much that needs to change, but the benefits to the organization and to the individuals and to the employees are amazing, and certainly something worth going through the transformation for. And it's really refreshing to hear of a company like IBM, of all companies, that you could have said to me that are seeing this and that are moving towards that model. It's very exciting to see as well on that. And if there's a question you could ask to our audience, what would that be? Because I think that's always interesting as well. If there's one question you wanted to ask the HR practitioners out there, what would that be?
I would ask them what's blocking them. What's blocking them to take the lead, to start transforming and becoming an agile project-driven company? What's blocking you? I think that's the core question.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, hopefully we get some good responses
Yeah.
from that. So, Antonio, where can we find out more about your work and also pick up a copy of the new book? Because I'm sure many of the listeners are very excited to get their hold of a copy and learn more.
Yeah, so I have a website, Nieto-Rodriguez.com. The book, it's sold through Amazon or the publisher, LID, LEAD. I can provide a discount code if there's a way we can share it. I'm happy to share the 30%. You know, you don't make money from books. It's about sharing.
It's about getting the message out there, right? And getting
exactly, and helping people. That's my my goal, and I'm happy to connect. I always very quick in responding and helping. I learn from every opportunity. So yeah, happy to keep in touch with you, Chris, and with your audience. We're going to be talking a lot more than what we think about projects in the next 5 to 10 years.
We certainly are. And what's the best way for anyone to reach out to you if they have any questions or want to get in contact with you directly?
Just LinkedIn, it's quick, or email. You can Google it and you'll find it through my website. It's quite easy to get in touch. LinkedIn, for sure, it's probably the quickest. And I'll reply always.
Fantastic. Well, as always, guys, for everyone listening, as you know, I'll link everything that Antonio just mentioned in the show notes and the description to make it easier for everyone. So you'll have a link to the book, a link to Antonio's website, and his LinkedIn page will all be linked in the description for you to make things easier. Apart from that, Antonio, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm sure we could have a lot more discussions, and we will be having a lot more discussions around this topic as well. Apart from that, I wish you all the best with the book launch, and I look forward to having you on the show again soon.
I look forward. Thank you, Chris, for the opportunity. Truly enjoyed the discussion. We could have gone forever.
See ya. Bye.